Happy birthday to Daniel Golden. By the way, Jim Williams, our guest media consultant, former executive in television as well, has family in town and still said he would find time for us here on 365 Sports. Jim, we always appreciate it. So you saw our discussion and scenario yesterday, which is very similar to something you had written about with Forbes.
Right.
And so when you saw or heard kind of what we were saying, what jumped out to you?
The nauseous feeling that George Kliavkoff would have in his stomach. The fact that they can't find a true linear partner, I think, is because remember we're talking ESPN is cable. There's still not a broadcast partner there. I would be if they're gonna license, the content out. I'd go back to Ion. I'd go back to CW. I'd go to every network, including the home shopping network, and find a way to get, some television eyeballs on it and work as best I could with them. But if this is where it ends up in, it's I'd have to have Tim Cook give that presentation.
Jim, is this the worst time that they could have imagined to try to negotiate this with? Look, NBC just added, Big Ten stuff, and there's going to be Big Ten stuff on Peacock. Peacock posted horrible numbers in the last quarter. ESPN, while they're trying to reshape everything, is laying people off left and right. So this is not the optimal time, and they're about to have a writer strike too on the other side of all this that they'll have to deal with as well. So this is maybe not the ideal moment for George Kliavkoff to even be picking up the phone and calling about these things.
Well, Paul, I mean, look, you're 100% right. The Bally's situation, where they're filing for bankruptcy with Sinclair. You've got the AT&T situation where they're trying to get out of the regional. I mean, that's kind of if you talk to the guys at Scripps. I mean, Scripps back when Smokey and I started Scripps, those were the television stations that carried the local baseball and local basketball. They were the regional TV stations that carried the stuff. And it's kind of like going back in that direction in a way. So the leagues want the NBA, the Major League Baseball, and hockey. They all want those local rights back so they can kind of do what the MLS did, and that is offer direct to consumer, which is where the PAC would be. I mean, that's exactly what we're talking about, guys. And that is you're selling your games directly to your fans. If that's the way you go with Apple TV.
So, Jim, this was all a scenario, and this is one, like you said, that you've kind of touched on, and we touched on as well. It's remains to be seen, but if it holds close to true, and there is this leasing out of Pac-12 games by Apple to, let's say, an ESPN to fill that time slot, how would that work? How would that work for all of the desired parties to where it makes everyone happy? Because the problem that I see is just getting the value out of that. If you're at ESPN, I mean, are you getting Oregon and Washington, or you get how would those conversations work to make all sides happy with the product that they're putting out there?
Gosh, Craig, I got to tell you, I was listening to you guys yesterday. I've actually listened to that thing now 4 or 5 times just to make sure that I'm not missing anything. And correct me quickly if I'm wrong. If Apple's the top dog here, if they're putting the money in, right, and they're subleasing this to ESPN, right there, that's an interesting dynamic because you're actually subleasing to one of your rivals. So you're subleasing, and you're paying the big freight. ESPN is not paying the big freight here. Mm-hmm. Why in the hell would you give them the best game you got?
Well, yeah, but isn't that
makes no sense?
I agree. And I think that's a great question from Craig, is we discussed that yesterday, and the scenarios would be if they want to give up who's going to want that? You would think Oregon and Washington would want the prime, like the Saturday night games for visibility, right? Because the other options are not anything but streaming. And there's no way the other schools in the conference, I don't care who they are, who they're aligned with, would ever accept that. And that's why I think that maybe there's been pushback, even though there's an idea, which, my God, they just want ideas. Yeah, I agree. And we asked that, how much money would ESPN pay, and would that be more for the Pac-12 or less?
Well, and the other thing, too, Smokey, is this. When ESPN telecast those games, okay? And, yeah, they did. The ratings were nice. No shade on the ratings. You couldn't get Oregon and Washington to play those games. They did not. No one in that damn entire Pac-12 conference wanted to play a 7:30 kick.
Oh.
So I'm, I listened to what you guys did yesterday, and kudos to you guys. I love you. I'm just thinking, this is a cluster beyond cluster. I can't, because ESPN is going to want stuff. Nobody's going to want to play it, except for the fact that if you play it, you get on national television.
Right.
How does that work? And by the way, the deal that MLS did with Fox and Apple, Apple is allowed to simulcast, the game on their package, so you can buy the package and not miss the game. Does ESPN get to simulcast that on ESPN Plus, or does Apple get to do the game too? I mean, how does that work?
But if that's the only, I guess you could say, linear option, wouldn't?
Yeah, I mean,
they wouldn't have much choice, would they?
But they meaning
Oregon, Washington, or anyone that wants to be on linear television for some extra exposure.
Oh yeah, no, 100%.
Yeah,
no, you're absolutely right. So yeah, they would have to play a 7:30 kick.
Jim, so I'm going to bring back something you brought up earlier and we've talked about before. I mean, I know that they don't want to do this, but it still seems to me like the CW is maybe their best option to get everything they would want.
Paul, I swear to God, I would be on the phone to the point where the people at the CW would hate to hear me. I would, look, no, again, Ion, right? That deal they did with the WNBA, I would tell, again, I would not ask for a single penny. I would just want clearance. I'd say, go ahead. And Apple, I think, would go with that because they need subscribers. So if you can have that time, okay, and you could barter that time out where you have time, they have time, sell time. And, again, we're going back to the old school way of doing this. Like I said, I would go to every network short of the Home Shopping Network until I got somebody that would give me some linear time because Ion, you're 100% right. CW and Ion have windows all day on Saturday. I would go there and just I'd be beating on the door till somebody listens to me because everybody else has football or something, of the linear networks. So on Saturday, I mean, if you look at, people forget there's golf on. People forget that NASCAR goes all the way to what is the first week before Thanksgiving.
Yeah, it's almost at the end of November, December, early December. Yeah.
So you've got all this, and don't forget you've got baseball going all the way to October, and then you've got the playoffs in baseball. So you got traffic all over the place here. So from a programming standpoint, it's you don't have that many windows, and even ESPN doesn't have that many windows.
Mm-hmm. So the MLS and Apple Plus are in this contract,
right?
Aren't the MLS owners? Have you heard anything about them being concerned that Apple might pull the plug because the subscriptions are only like 40% of the estimated goals?
All right, let me help out here. I never usually turn on my own. Okay. But if I read another columnist from another newspaper who is bitching about this, I'm going to throw up. You're starting the first month and a half of a 10-year deal. How do you think that's going to work? It's not. I mean, come on. You expect that the day that you start selling these things, that it's going to fly off the shelf because you are now taking something that somebody watched for free on ESPN and Fox for years, and you're going to turn them into a streamer in a month and a half? Why do you think they did a 10-year contract? It's the same thing with Thursday Night Football. Amazon was probably happy that they got what they got. Think about this. They got 9 million, depending on whose numbers you think, they got between 9 million and 11 million homes watching football on streaming. Those beat the numbers that the NFL Network had. So, no, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to go off on that.
No, that's fine.
Beautiful, Jim.
I know that you're feisty, and I love this because you've put a lot of time into this along with others. All right, so if in fact it is the scenario of 100% of Apple TV Plus,
yep.
What do you think? What happens? Will there be, I'm not trying to get you to say this for clicks and views. We don't do this. But if they go 100% Apple TV Plus, if that's what happens, do you see anyone defecting from the Pac-12?
I got to say, yeah. Look, I can get to 7 votes and I need 8. I can't get to 8. And if I can't get to 8, I can't get to a grant of rights. If I can't get to a grant of rights, I don't have a conference. I mean, I'm counting Utah in that count.
In the 6 or the 7?
In the 7.
Yeah.
So maybe I'm being Pollyannish in this, but I'm counting Utah. The president of Utah has been an incredibly active gentleman in helping the negotiations along. I have heard nothing, crickets out of Oregon. And trust me, Washington is not going to vote if Oregon doesn't. So I think the coast is okay. I mean, you know what I'm saying? I don't think I have to worry about the coast from voting standpoint if I'm trying to get votes. The only one of the corner schools I'm going to get would be Utah. I'm definitely not going to get Colorado, and the 2 Arizona schools I don't think I'm going to get either.
Paul mentioned earlier about the bad timing. Sometimes it's just bad luck. It's unfortunate. But the Pac-12 did have a year ago a chance to react immediately. Everyone can mention what Yormark did, and that was great, and he was smart and all that, and he probably got some advice. But why not then, like Bowlesby did, reacting to adding 4 schools when they were on the campus and almost knocked out again? I'm not saying it's a media deal, but why would they not have just said, let's get this done immediately. Let's go. Let's make our future. Let's get some stability like Yormark tried to do and did for the Big 12.
Get out the dictionaries, boys and girls. The term is hubris. That's the only thing I can think, honest to God. I just think that they looked at it and went, come on, you can't be serious offering me that. And I can honestly tell you that I do actually feel sorry for George Kliavkoff, because honestly, guys, he worked for the presidents of the universities, and he has to do what they tell him to do. And if he takes that number and they just said, George, what are you nuts? There's no way this is going to happen. then George has to go back and, tell ESPN and Fox, boys, this isn't going to get it for me. And then they say, well, this is the best we can do. And then he's out, shopping. And then the recession hit, and, shopping ain't, you're in trouble. And so I honestly think it was just the fact that people were overvaluing themselves. And look, that's something you take into consideration every time you go into these types of things. What is the quote unquote market value? And I think at the time, the market value for both conferences, because they were both damaged at the time, was probably about the same. And, and Brent went in and he was smart enough, to go in and get the deal he got. And could he have gotten more? Perhaps, but he took what was offered him. And again, that was the smart deal there that was an extension, not a, not a totally new contract. So that was a little easier to do because you're really just adjusting numbers on, in games and such. But, it's not anywhere near as hard to do as something totally from scratch, and especially from scratch with streamers and people who have never even done this stuff before. So, I only can imagine that it was they overpriced or overthought they were worth what the market was offering at the time.
Hey, Jim, we appreciate it. I know you have family in town, and I know you have a lot of connections in the TV network and cable business. Have you heard at all, and I'm not trying to start this at all, but I'm just curious, have you had anybody give you feelers that the turf war of who would leave or not, and most people think that it's still going to end up, finally, they're going to figure it out, right? That's what we've even said despite some of the stories, and there have been some thoughts like, wow, have you heard of anybody whatsoever is about to cross that foot across, whatever, draw that line in the sand and put their foot across that line from the Pac-12?
No.
Okay.
I have not. And by the way, because you guys did such a great job yesterday, I spent hours on the phone last night. I even texted Dennis Dodd and he goes, "Hey, leave me alone. I'm at this draft." But he's nice enough to text you back later saying if you want to bother me, you can. I wonder what happened to Amazon.
I mean, ours was
my phone call. The first phone call this morning was, where the hell is Amazon? Did they just fall out of this 20 minutes ago? What's going on here? How did it end up ESPN and Apple? Not that you need another streamer into this mess, but I'm just saying. But look, it still ain't over, guys. So
no.
But if it is, if what you and you guys have been right a hell of a lot more than you've been wrong. If it ends up being this, like I said, the only person who might be able to talk them into it is Tim Cook, and I swear to God, I would have him in that room and talking to every president there, because he's a guy who can sit there and say, "Hey, ladies and gentlemen, we have pushed out," and we're not going with hyperbole here. We've pushed out 1 billion devices that communicate throughout the world. You can't tell me that we can't figure out a way to get your people to see what you've got. Mm-hmm. Now, whether I believe that or not, I don't know, but I'm just saying Tim Cook's a hell of a salesman. So if this is going to be sold, it better be sold by Tim Cook and better not be tried to be sold by George Kliavkoff, because that's not going to work.
So finally, I know you got to go. What was the reaction when you tried to check on it? Where's Amazon?
The guys that I spoke to at Amazon were actually in Italy. So I don't know what I'm. All
right.
I have had some issues getting there. So they're there, and they did know, but they said if they got any got any information to get back to me. So.
Jim, you're the best, man. We appreciate it. And sorry to take you away from your family, but we appreciate
problem.
your time. Thank you.
Hey, stay safe. I understand the weather's bad. I was in the chat room there for a while, and they tell me the weather's bad.
Thank you so much. Jim Williams.
You well, guys. Have a good weekend.
Forbes Zanger, columnist, and also media consultant with us on much of what we discussed with the possibility of the scenario involving Apple Plus, Apple TV Plus, and S4 being that slot to ESPN. But then how and who gets what games, and how do you decide to do that, and what teams then get left out even more? This is 365 Sports.
Riverbend Liquor and Wine.